there's something you guys need to know about what's going on in Australia that the media is not telling you. So at 4 a.m., some of you know this, some of you may be hearing about it for the first time. And I think that this is relatively relevant to what happened here in the US last week, only this is on a much larger scale. So at 4 a.m., there were a lot of outages in the OPTUS network. The OPTUS network is basically the internet network for 40% of Australians, and the entire network went down. And so it didn't just affect, your ability to get online on your computer. It affected mobile phones. It affected vendors being able to process payments in their retail stores. It affected hospitals. The landlines were down. I mean, basically, it's like if you woke up in Australia, you woke up in a communications blackout across the board, because landlines are all IP systems now. And so it's actually a pretty, what has happened is pretty devastating to a lot of people who don't know what's going on, don't have a way of communicating, and you can imagine it would be complete chaos. Could you imagine that happening here? I mean, you see what happens when people don't win Nintendo games; they go out and riot. So just imagine, with the mentality of some of the young people in our society today, what would happen if their cell phone didn't work all of a sudden, or they couldn't, run their debit card, or, basically, this outage is pretty massive. They've been blaming the outage on the Border Gateway Protocol, or BGP, and that's not an official blame. Okay, that's a speculation. This outage occurred really, really deep within the OPTUS network, so it's not something that they could easily identify. Basically, there are some analysts out there who believe that this could have something to do with it, because Facebook, Instagram, the WhatsApp app, they all went down a year ago for a similar reason. But the fact that this is so wide scale and so well implemented has a lot of people questioning whether or not it was a cyber attack. And of course, the first thing that OPTUS has done is deny that it could possibly be a cyber attack, and remind us of how secure their networks are and how advanced their networks are. I would like to remind all of you that about 14 months ago, OPTUS network was hacked. 10 million customers had all of their information leaked out. Hacks can be very, very sophisticated. The hack that happened to OPTUS a little over a year ago now was a very sophisticated hack, and they never figured out who did it. I mean, nobody ever finds out who does this stuff, but they came to the determination that it was a hack. The problem is that if we give the credibility of a hack right now, number one, it would send people into fear, right? Because if Australia can get hacked and it can take, a bunch of people offline, who else could get hacked? If the United States got hacked, or our power grid got hacked, it would be complete chaos. It would take a long time to get everything back up and running. But last week, we had a problem with the clearinghouse, and some people think it has something to do with Capital Bank, which failed. Capital Bank is like only the 4th or 5th bank this year to fail, which is completely normal for a healthy Biden economy. It could have had something to do with that bank failing. They could have been kind of temporarily shutting things down, and then the bank reopens under a different name. I mean, all that did happen. That's all stuff that happened. But I don't think that we should rule out the possibility that what we experienced here in the United States was a soft cyber attack. Soft because I think if they wanted to, they can make it much harder. And I think that if we were to give credibility to any of these things being cyber attacks, then it empowers those who are doing it. At the same time, I don't think that people should be blindsided to the fact that these things do happen. These things can happen. They can happen at any moment in time. And if you're not prepared for it, you're going to be living in chaos like people are in Australia. By not being completely open about the possibility of a hack, by denying that a hack could even happen on your system 14 months after it just happened on your system, is a little bit misleading to me. And I do believe that there's something strange going on. These shutdowns of these systems seem to be happening at times when, we're experiencing unrest around the world, and there are people who would like to shut down the Western world. So, think about, this and take a look at what's happened over there. Pay attention to these types of things and think about what you could do if you were in those situations and what you wish you had available to you if you were in that situation. For example, if you are somebody who requires power for medical reasons, make sure that you have that stuff on hand. Last year, just 20 minutes down the road from us, somebody shot up part of the power grid. And I'm going to talk a little more about this later this week because I think this is important. There are some things that are going to be happening over the next several months that you guys should be aware of when it comes to the possibility of a loss of power. But, somebody shot up the power grid and it was down for over a week. People died and they never found the perpetrators, which makes you wonder, how sophisticated was that attack? How sophisticated were the perpetrators? We can't rule these things out at this point in time. And I think that what's happening in Australia, and my perspective, I think that somebody figured out a way to hack the system, and they were successful. Found some windows, I see.
I did. Cold frame.
Yeah.
In the making.
As much as I'd love to sit around and talk to you guys, it appears as though there are projects going on around our farm. We've been working on, so I don't know if you guys have ever seen the show Wartime Farm, but they talk about how things were in World War II. It's very distracting.
Sorry. Treasure hunting.
Anyway, and basically how they had to put to use every single part of their farm. And the Department of Agriculture in Britain would come in and make sure that they were reaching certain goals and were able to do certain things. And so that is, when you think about these times that we're going into, that should be your mindset. What can you do to put your farm, your homestead into complete production? So that's the type of stuff that we've been working on here. Because we've been traveling a lot, you see the travel vlogs, our gardens got way overgrown because we just weren't here. We didn't plan a harvest or anything, but we are definitely getting stuff in the ground now, especially some of the winter crops that you can do. Hey, buddy. Oh, wow.
In the barn. Thought you might appreciate that treasure.
Yeah.
We found all that stuff. We found all the stuff we were holding.
All very useful things.
Yeah. That's a treasure trove, isn't it, buddy? Here, have a blade. I'll come join you in a few minutes.
We're going to wash this all off.
All right. Anyway, so yeah, we basically had to come in last night, just burn everything off and start over. This is what ends up happening when you don't garden for a year. Lots of weeds. You end up having to burn it all. It's time to start thinking about these things and making sure that you have an action plan put together. And, the next video I do is going to be about surviving with a grid down situation for a long period of time. And some of the things that I'm going to talk about are stuff that you can expect to happen in the next several months. And if it does happen, if historically these systems have been down for long periods of time, but what I'm talking about hasn't happened for about 20 years. And so I think society is mentally in a very different place than it was 20 years ago. So your preparations are going to be a little different. Anyway, let me know what you think about Australia. I'm not buying, the media's coverage of it. And I think, based on what happened 14 months ago and what we're seeing happen right now, the fact that something very similar that shut down, part of our economy here in the U.S. last Friday just happened to us. The timing just seems a little bit too suspicious. And I agree, there's to a certain extent, you want to empower these people, but and you don't want to send people into chaos, into fear. But at the same time, knowledge is power. Having knowledge and the ability to plan, knowing what the threats are out there is extremely important. And believe it or not, Trump had studies done to see what would happen in grid down situations for a reason. And those studies were shared with the public for a reason.